If you've ever seen viral, trendy food videos online, you've probably seen honeycomb candy. And it's actually really cool. The idea is that there's this candy that actually sort of looks just like honeycomb that's supposed to taste a little bit like honey. But I was recently looking through some of those viral videos online, and I was a little bit upset to find out that a lot of the time it actually doesn't have any honey in it at all. Really, you just have that evil corn syrup, which I'll be honest, the more I cook, the more I realize the corn syrup really can do some magic. How do you think you get that really nice crispy crackly glaze on top of a Krispy Kreme donut? It's all corn syrup. But today we're gonna do something awesome. I have gotten myself an entire honeycomb. Not the honeycomb candy, the actual honeycomb from a bunch of bees. And I'm gonna take this honeycomb and make some honeycomb candy that actually has honey in it. It's a super simple recipe to follow with only a couple ingredients that you probably already have at home. And more importantly, it's delicious. First, let me show you this honeycomb. Now here's my box. When this thing arrived, there were literally stickers all over it. I couldn't let this thing get exposed to sunlight. I had to be careful about heat and stacking it. Clearly there's something really precious inside. And here's the best part. When I opened it up, I was beyond happy to be surprised by the type of packing peanuts that I've always said are edible. Now, I highly recommend you don't eat these because these are not actually edible. But back in school, my genius brain always used to think that they were, and I'd pop them right in. Funnily enough, they taste exactly like cornflakes. But in all seriousness, I'm not joking when I say don't eat these. It's just shocking how much these taste like cornflakes. For the record, I haven't opened this yet. You're seeing it all in real time right now. I'll brush all these packing peanuts off, and after these 8 million pounds of plastic wrap, I'll remove my honeycomb frame. Now this is really cool. You can see right there, close up to the edge, where the honeycomb itself is actually just clinging to the frame, almost hanging on for dear life. I'm gonna start by cutting this out of this big vacuum sealed package. I have to be really delicate with this thing here, so I'm gonna cut around the sides instead of trying to slide it out. The moment I open this thing up, the entire room is filling with the scent of honey. It smells so good. It smells so good. That is the most powerful smell of honey I've ever experienced. It's sweet, it's creamy, it's warm. It's almost kind of flowery and herbal and crazy aromatic. Now I'm gonna be real careful here and lift this thing up. That is so cool. Now, can you believe that that right there is an entire frame of honeycomb? I mean, I guess it's not that hard to believe because I am holding it right here, but it's just incredible to look at. Just check out that detail as you get really close to the corners here. I love how it almost clings like webbing to the edge. And as I get even closer, each individual hole is perfectly shaped. Every single one just like the one next to it. But honestly, I can't get over this smell. Something about this has a honey fragrance unlike anything I've ever experienced before. And I think this is gonna help us make the most amazing honeycomb candy we possibly can. But enough about the honeycomb. Let's get cooking. I'm gonna start with just a little bit of my honeycomb in this little glass bowl. Even when we are using real honey for this honeycomb candy recipe, we actually only need a few tablespoons. But first we have to separate that wax from the actual honey. And the way to do that is really simple. I'm just gonna pulse this in the microwave a couple of times until the honey starts to separate from the wax. Then we'll strain it. Don't melt it so long that the wax itself starts to melt too much, but you can see already that it's turned into quite a liquid here and that there's a bunch of wax pooling up on the side of my glass bowl here. Now, holding my strainer over another little glass bowl, I'll pour that honey straight through the strainer. That should catch all the wax. And again, as you can see, we actually caught most of it on the edge of the bowl when it started hardening again. Now here we should have a few tablespoons of pure, delicious honey, but we can keep straining this a few more times to get all of that wax out because it'll continue to separate right on the top of the bowl. Now to start making our honeycomb candy, we'll add into our pan 2 cups of sugar, 1/2 cup light corn syrup, 1 tablespoon of honey, and 1/3 cup of water. We'll stir this around until it's well incorporated, then bring our pan up to medium-high heat and let it go until it starts to boil. Once this mixture hits 300 Fahrenheit or about 150 Celsius, remove it from the heat. Now immediately sprinkle in 1 tablespoon of baking soda and whisk for only about 5 seconds. This will bubble up a ton, and that's great because that means our honeycomb candy is gonna have a lot of nice air bubbles in it. Then we'll immediately pour this into a parchment-lined baking sheet that's been well greased. Try to pour low so that you don't pop any of the air bubbles. A lot of this will stick to the pan, but that's okay. Do what you can and then let it go. And to get this whole mess off your pan, fill it up with water and let it come to a boil several times. This will all pour right out. Don't try to hack and scrape at it. That'll just ruin your pan. We are not going to touch this or even move this for 1 to 2 hours. It'll almost look like hot bubbly lava and will sit there and rise up and down. But don't be tempted to touch it or do anything. Just let it sit. Now that this has been resting for about an hour and a half, or probably almost 2 hours, let's take it out of here. I love that right now it's still kind of in a standalone type dish. It's almost just made its own container here. But let's peel back our parchment paper as gently as possible. The better you oil up this parchment paper, the easier this part will be. But it looks like I did a pretty good job here. Now we'll take this whole block out of our parchment paper. I want to show this up close for a second because that is really cool. And honestly, I can't tell what's cooler. The honeycomb made by bees or the honeycomb made by me. I gotta say everyone, they're both pretty sweet. Also, don't worry if it sinks down just a little bit. It sets a little bit higher in the pan, but some of those air bubbles are naturally gonna pop and sink it down in the middle. And as long as you still have those nice air bubbles and get that honeycomb texture, you're good. I'll move my parchment paper out of the way and set this down on my cutting board. To crack this bad boy open, I'll use the blunt end of my knife. You can use whatever tool you want here, but I figure something like a spoon and a knife will have a nice edge that won't be too sharp and it'll actually crack it when I hit it. Now, crack away. As you can see right here, we got a really nice honeycomb texture. It definitely settled a little bit more at the bottom, but that's all right. This is our first ever attempt here, and I've heard these can be pretty temperamental. We crushed it. Let me just hit it a few more times to get some smaller pieces. The more air bubbles you have on the inside of this, and the lighter it looks, the better you've done. We've done a really great job. The only other thing you have to keep in mind is that it needs to have that hard crack when you bite into it. So just listen for a second. Perfect. Now we're gonna dip some of that honeycomb into chocolate. To start, I do have this nice big beautiful hunk of chocolate, but I'm gonna be lazy today. And instead of cutting that up, I'm gonna use these nice little bits that I got going on here. Tempering chocolate's actually pretty easy. The idea is basically that you're gonna make the chocolate such that when you dip it, it'll harden back into that perfect shiny chocolate and won't just melt at room temperature. Think of a Snickers bar. That chocolate on the outside of a Snickers bar, it's tempered. It can sit there at room temperature and get that nice little crack when you bite into it. It's never gonna really melt at room temperature, unless you're in a ridiculously hot room, but you get the point. First, I'll add about 80 grams of this chocolate into a glass bowl over a double boiler. This pan at the bottom just has a little bit of water, and when that water boils, it's gonna start melting the chocolate in a really gentle way. To start, we wanna bring this chocolate to 114 degrees Fahrenheit. I know it's very specific, but that's the point. Place an instant read thermometer in here and let that melt. Once it hits 114 degrees Fahrenheit, remove this from the heat immediately. Then right away, I'll add another 60 grams of chocolate and slowly stir this around while I let that melt. Again, this is gonna be a really specific number, but we're gonna be waiting for this to come down to exactly 91 degrees Fahrenheit. Once that chocolate hits that perfect 91 degrees Fahrenheit, you're ready to dip. Can I just show you that again? Look how beautiful that is. This is one of those times where it's okay to lick the spoon. Now with a few pieces of our honeycomb, let's dip them right into our chocolate. Once you get a nice coating that perhaps just covers part of it, lay this down on a parchment layered baking sheet and let it cool. I don't want to do this with all my honeycomb, but maybe just a couple pieces to mix it up a little bit. It really does look cool when it's dipped. I also want to do this as quickly as possible here, because the closer my chocolate is to that perfectly tempered temperature, the easier it'll be to get that dip in and then have them cool in the perfect way. Some of my honeycombs still have that lip up there, which I'm actually really excited to bite into, because I already know that this part right here is going to be a heck of a lot crispier and thinner than anything over here. This will give me that chewier bite over on this end, while this one will be a light crisp, almost like a cracker. This also gives me the perfect handle to dip yet again in my chocolate. Now that we've dipped all our honeycomb, let's toss this in the fridge for just a little bit to let that chocolate solidify, and then we're ready to eat. Now that our chocolate's been resting in the fridge for a little while, it's fully tempered and it's set. Let me just lift this whole bad boy right off for you. Isn't it satisfying how easily that comes off? And most importantly, you can tell by the shine on this chocolate that we've done a really good job tempering. This should almost crunch a little bit when we go to bite this. It shouldn't be really soft like a piece of fudge. It should snap and then be soft and smooth after we eat it and it warms up in our mouth. Now you might be wondering, how do I still have this whole perfectly intact honeycomb even though we made that candy? Very simple. I tricked you. I just had more honeycomb to work with. But I wanted to save this whole piece to do some honeycomb ASMR towards the end, because that's the biggest treat to your ears that you can possibly give. This honeycomb ASMR is going to be music to your ears. Here we go. I'm gonna start by cutting some of this out of the frame. I'll leave some of it in there because we don't need that big a piece to start with. Now I'll cut out about a square size of honeycomb and then lift the rest of the comb up to leave that piece. What we're left with is a perfect wafer of honeycomb. I kind of just want to take a giant bite out of the corner here, but I can't forget why we're here. Honeycomb ASMR. Look at the honey just begging to come out of the edge of that. Now just watch and listen as I cut through this. And now we'll split it open. You can't tell me that that's not one of the single coolest things you've ever seen. And now listen and watch as I squeeze out that honey. That is some of the stickiest, most amazing honey that you will ever see. I feel like Winnie the Pooh right now. But I think for today, we've had enough fun with our honeycomb. Let's go ahead and eat what we came here to make today. Now, you know I can't go through this without taking a big bite out of a big piece of honeycomb itself first. So let me get close so you can listen. It's just bustling with that sweet, sweet nectar at the edge, and I cannot resist. I'm gonna eat it like a sandwich. Oh, that's so good. You know, the crazy thing is I'm actually continually bummed out by how many fillings I have at this point. I literally have to go in like 3 weeks to get a couple more fillings in my teeth. And I'm always so confused why my teeth are so bad, but now we know why. Why would I do anything like that? But let's get to the real tasting, the honeycomb itself. We have two options here. The regular honeycomb and the chocolate dipped honeycomb. Let's start with the regular just to get that pure flavor. Examining this piece closely, we got really nice airflow through there. Those bubbles are awesome. There's a little bit of settling at the bottom where I think it'll be a bit chewier, but I actually kind of like that. The whole bite is gonna be completely different all the way through. Now let's give this a try. That is crazy. I bit a lot harder than I probably should have to start because I didn't think too hard about how there would be that chewy resistance towards the middle. And I mean that in the best way possible. It is so good. The second you bite into that, it's almost kind of light and foamy, but then starts dissolving in your mouth into almost a honey-like taffy. That color on there just screams caramelization, and the flavors are ridiculous. What I love also is that I do taste the honey in there because we actually did put a little bit of honey in this one. In my mind, how can you call it honeycomb candy if you don't actually put honeycomb in there? I know it looks like it, but toss in that flavor. Come on. Now for the chocolate dipped one. We tempered our chocolate really well, and I'm pumped to try it out. Here we go. Oh yeah, that is incredible. I'm really happy that I used dark chocolate because it couples really well with the almost overwhelming sweetness from that honeycomb. I'm realizing I never held up the two side by side. So before we finish, I just want to show you that. They actually do look pretty similar, don't they? Color and texture wise, it's great. But for now, thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you loved it as much as I loved making it. It's always nice to be able to play with such incredible ingredients. Now, don't forget to like the video, toss in a comment, whatever you want. I read all of them. And in the meantime, make sure you subscribe. And if you really want to, join that notifications gang with us. I got a lot of honey to clean up and a lot of honeycomb to finish. So I'll see you next time.